So we're back with Steve Sinetti of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They're the ones who put on SHOT Show, among other events. So people may not know how politically active you guys are. So tell us about some of the legislation you guys have been supporting, and what other events do you all plan besides SHOT Show?
Well, we've got a lot of things that both our groups are interested in, obviously. One of the things that we're focusing on right now is the Hearing Protection Act. It's something that obviously that the shooting community wants to get behind. And to just clear up any misconceptions, it doesn't completely deregulate suppressors.
Yeah.
What it does is say that we treat a suppressor the same way we treat a firearm. You still have to go through a background check, et cetera. But it takes it out of the thing of requiring permission of a law enforcement officer, getting fingerprinted, paying $200 transfer fees, that whole thing with a long backlog.
I'm going to pause you just for a second. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, because I think that's an excellent point. I think and all of the advocacy I've been seeing, and even on my part, we haven't been doing a very good job of fleshing out that aspect of it. The idea that we're not saying Oprah Winfrey is going to run down the street and throw suppressors at everybody's house. It just means we're going to handle suppressors the same way we do firearms, because the way they're handled now is incredibly restrictive. And so I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's something that I think we tend to miss because we're so ingrained in it. We understand it, but I think people on the other side don't so much understand what we mean by deregulating suppressors. So that was a great point. Sorry, I just wanted to highlight that.
And I think that's a good point. And I think we're missing the boat on another aspect of the argument on this too, and that's that even the name, the Hearing Protection Act, makes it seem as though the only people who would benefit from this act are shooters. Gotcha. And it's not true at all. Yeah. I mean, think about it for a second. When people complain about shooting ranges and they say, well, they're not safe, they're not really complaining about the safety, they're complaining about the noise.
The noise, yeah.
So we become better neighbors if the shooting ranges are more quiet. Same thing during hunting season. People say, oh, I don't like hunters because I don't like hearing guns going off in the woods.
Yeah.
Well, in Europe, you almost have to use suppressors when you're hunting in a lot of countries because they consider it to be polite and not to disturb the rest of the public. Yeah. So I think we should be selling it not just as a way to help shooters' hearing and protect that, because there are earmuffs and other things available, but it's also to make us responsible members of the larger community. I mean, you wouldn't have a car without a muffler because the noise would drive people nuts. So why not have firearms be quieter so everybody benefits from that? I think we're kind of missing the boat on that argument a bit.
No, absolutely, because I know I get incredibly peeved when I see a little 18-year-old with a loud exhaust that is deafening. God, I just aged myself, but nonetheless.
Right.
But no, yeah, I think you make a great point in that sense. I think we tend to approach it almost from a very self-serving standpoint, just from a shooter-oriented perspective. But right. Yeah, I think if the more people understand, the problems that you perceive with just the overall noise of firearms in your life, right. Those largely diminish if you pretty much allow us to have suppressors. So, a lot easier than we're able to now. And honestly, I think they're at a point now where I think suppressors are largely cost prohibitive for a lot of people. I think there's an element to that too, an economic argument where, we look at the situation for what it is, $200 just to apply the tax that you have to pay on top of a suppressor that can easily run you up to $1,000.
Sure. Well, any way you look at it, quieter is better, no matter what activity you're doing. So much, yeah. Again, a lot of the opposition to it, like we talked about earlier, is based on fear.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand and they fear, they tend to be against. And it's up to us to try to educate them that this is a perfectly normal thing to do. And actually, we should have had suppressors on firearms a long time ago. It's just the law was the law, and we comply with the law, but let's make it better.
Yeah.
And speaking of shooting ranges, another aspect of legislation we're trying to push through is that part of the Bipartisan Sportsman Act last year that had to do with allowing the excise tax monies that every shooter and hunter pays when they buy firearm or ammunition, using a larger portion of that money to let the states build shooting ranges. That's part of the sportsman's package that didn't get passed. It's taken out and is called the Target Marksmanship Act. And it's something that we're trying to push to get more people out shooting by having more places to go shoot. Concealed carry reciprocity is another thing that we believe, your rights don't end at state lines. And if you're licensed by a state and you have a permit to carry in one state, we don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to carry in another state.
Yeah.
So those are 3 legislative initiatives that we're behind this year. Another one that probably affects industry more than affects the direct consumer is export control reform. Many people don't know that to export a firearm, you go through the same procedure and the same controls as someone who's trying to export a fighter jet or a tank. And the commerce in firearms internationally, there's no reason to regulate a single-shot 22 rifle the same way you would a jet.
Yeah.
And you have to go through Congress, you have to go through the State Department. It's a very involved process. It takes time, and we are at a definite competitive disadvantage with our European counterparts who are trying to have commerce in firearms, whether it's to governments, law enforcement, or civilians all around the world. So we're trying to get export control reform through. We almost managed to do that in the last administration. We are one of the last categories of exports that comes under State Department control as opposed to Commerce Department control. We're trying to get that through as well, too. So we have a number of legislative initiatives that industry is trying to push this year, along with help from other groups like yours.
Absolutely. I want to go back to something you pointed out about the ranges and taking the money from the taxes that, and the fees that we pay to open more ranges. And I can see on the surface somebody looking at that and saying, no, we don't want more ranges. But there's a safety component with respect to that as well. A lot of people don't go out and shoot because they just don't have access to the places to shoot. And trust me, you want people to be able to shoot as much as their heart desires, because the more familiar you become with that gun, the better you are and the safer you are with that firearm. And there's so many things about guns that seem obvious, that are not that obvious to people, especially when you have a very limited understanding of them. And so being able to put things in a position where they understand how those two are connected in terms of, no, you have more ranges, thus allowing people to shoot more, which creates safer shooters, period.
Right. Well, the hunting and recreational shooting are legitimate outdoor activities that the public supports. We see that in opinion polls. But again, I think when people are concerned, if they think that there's unregulated shooting going on federal lands when they want to hike or fish or camp or take their RV out. So if we just agree that let's have safe places for people to shoot on federal lands, then everybody wins.
Yeah.
People, in their fear of firearms and shooting and hunting, they lose sight of the fact that these are legitimate activities that people want to do. Public lands belong to the general public, which includes hunters and shooters. So let's make some accommodations so we can all enjoy things to our mutual benefit. Keep it quiet, keep it safe, keep families together, enjoying the activities and the great outdoors. Everybody wins.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, we have about a minute left, and before we go, I want to get your opinion. Does the Nssf have a position on the Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch?
Oh, we're a strong supporter of Judge Gorsuch. He is a strict constructionist. He believes in the original intent of the founding fathers in the Constitution. He hasn't ruled directly on Second Amendment cases, but we think that from what we've seen and heard at the hearings, he's an excellent choice. He's a judge who will follow the law, not create the law out of what he thinks the law should be. And I don't think you could ask for more than that as a Supreme Court judge. So we're very strongly in favor of him. And we wish him well and hope he makes it.
Absolutely. I'd have to agree with you on that, at least as much as I know about him and things that I've heard from him in his positions. But thank you very much, Steve. As always, it's a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope to have you back on the show at some point pretty soon.
Anytime, Colion. Thank you so much. We're honored to be here.
All right. You take it easy.
Take care.
All right. I want to thank Steve and Mike for joining us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern, and I hope you will see you too. I'm Colion Noir, and I'm out.